High Court in Banjul ruled on Wednesday that former APRC junta member Yankuba Ture has a case to answer in the murder of Krosise. President Adama Barrow extends the state of public emergency for another 21 days throughout the country. And Nigerian aviation industry is set to resume operations after a long break due to the COVID-19 outbreak. This and more coming on the world today. Hello there, this is Africa TV and you're watching the World Today News Bulletin. I am Amadou Kante. Many thanks for joining us, and now the news in detail. Now, the High Court in Banjul on Wednesday dismissed the no-case submission filed by Yankuba Ture's lawyer in his trial on the murder of the late Usman Krosise. The former AFPRC junta member was arrested in June 2019 after he refused to testify at the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparation Commission for alleged human rights violations committed by former regime from 1994 to 2017. Here is more details of that in this report. The High Court in Banjul has ruled on Wednesday that former junta member of the debunked AFPRC, Yankuba Ture, has got a case to answer on the murder charges levied against him. His defense counsel has filed as no-case submission following the testimonies of 9 prosecution witnesses. Justice Ibrahim Jaite ruled that the prosecution has established a case against Ture by adducing both direct and circumstantial evidences in the case, calling on the accused to open his defense. Yankuba Ture is on trial for a single count of murder contrary to Section 187 of the Criminal Code of the Laws of the Land. He is alleged to have conspired with the other junta members in the killing of former Secretary of State for Finance Usman Krosise. In addition to the accounts of 9 witnesses, the prosecution tendered exhibits inclusive of an autopsy report. Counsel for the defense, Abdullahi Sissoho, submitted that the prosecution had failed to make a prima facie case against the accused person to require him to enter his defense. But the principal state counsel, A.M. Yusuf, responded that no case submission section 166 of the Criminal Procedure Code is applicable only to the subordinate courts and not before the High Court. The case is now adjourned to the 16th of June for the accused person to open his defense before the High Court. Reporting for Africa News, I am Amadou Kante. And from the report there, we stay home and report on matters of the state of public emergency in the Gambia, because President of the Gambia, Adama Barrow, has announced the extension of the state of public emergency for another height of 21 days. This is the third time the president is invoking constitutional powers to issue restrictions meant to curb the spread of the COVID-19. The National Assembly previously rejected the motion to extend the state of emergency by 90 days, after which the president took it upon himself. A state of public emergency was first declared on March 27 for 21 days to curb the spread of COVID-19, and on April 3rd, the Parliament approved a 45-day extension. Gambia has so far reported 28 confirmed cases of COVID-19, including 1 death and 125 people quarantined across centers in the country. That we report on the death of George Floyd, because finally George Floyd was finally laid to rest at a cemetery right next to the grave of his mother in the city of Austin on Tuesday. Hundreds of mourners alongside a legal team expressed their solidarity to the family of Floyd during public viewing of his casket. They wore matching black color shirts written the Floyd last words, "I can breathe." Here's more details of that in this report.
George Floyd was finally allowed to rest in peace in the Memorial Gardens in Pearland, right next to his mother's grave in his native city, Austin, on Tuesday. Hundreds of mourners, alongside with a legal team, expressed their solidarity to the family of Floyd during the public viewing of his casket, with a matching black-colored shirt written with Floyd's last word, "I can't breathe." Floyd, who died of asphyxia when a Minneapolis police officer knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes, saying he couldn't breathe, taken by a horse carriage accompanied by a huge crowd to his resting place. One of the mourners in attendance of Floyd's service said they hope for an honest change of black lives even when the camera lights are off.
We really hope and pray that, given the circumstances that we have witnessed with George Floyd, that when the lights and cameras are gone away, that we will remember not only George Floyd, but we'll remember Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and the many others who lost their lives to police brutality and injustices that was not served for these people and their innocent lives lost. We hope that this movement continue to go forward and that we do see the change that we need to, especially once the lights and cameras are gone away.
Floyd's casket to be entombed near his mom's was not something envisioned 2 years ago, the owner of the cemetery, Janice Howard, said. The owners of the cemetery where Floyd has been laid to rest noted that the black African deserve a place in the memorial home.
My husband and I, Bonnie Howard, purchased the cemetery approximately 26 years ago, and it is probably one of the largest minority-owned cemeteries in the United States of America. So we really find it most appropriate that George is going to be buried with us on today. And we feel it's an honor, and little did we know 2 years ago when we buried his mom that we would also be burying him today.
The death of Floyd is attributed to many as a turning point to end the long and deep-rooted racism and police violence in the U.S.
I'm here today because this is just a beautiful thing, and we're here to celebrate this man who changed, not the world, but he really made people, wake up. He died for a cause, and it's sad how he died and, why he died. But, it brings people together of all races.
The officer responsible for Floyd's death, Derek Chauvin, was charged with second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter with an increment of his bail to $1.5 million. The other 3 officers present at the scene were also charged for aiding and abetting the killing. For iAfrica TV News, Sohna Tunkara.
An African-American, George Floyd, finally laid to rest after his killing by a white police officer in the U.S. Now, from that, of course, we move to North Africa because in efforts to help tackle the coronavirus global pandemic and support the vulnerable groups, the parliament in Tunisia has approved 180 million euros as loans from the African Development Bank. The bank would also help 330,000 small farmers, more than 320,000 employers and 50,000 workers to keep their jobs. Tunisia, like any other country, has seen a decline in the economy since the outbreak of the COVID-19. Here's more details of that in this report.
The funds approved by the Board of Directors of the African Development Bank will support the North African state's effort against COVID-19. In addition, it will help Tunisian authorities to cope with the economic and social consequences of this unprecedented sanitary crisis.
The African Development Bank is helping Tunisia at a critical stage. The country has many economic and social problems. The African dimension of this loan is important. It shows the solidarity of African lenders with the countries facing the negative repercussions of the crisis.
Moreover, a considerable sum will be transferred to the Ministry of Social Affairs. It will provide social coverage and immediate assistance for more than 2 million vulnerable individuals, including 140,000 low-income pensioners.
Women and children, as well as low-income pensioners and vulnerable families, and to this direct financial assistance because they have been suffering for 3 months. However, the state needs to mobilize more resources because the extent of the economic and social damage is catastrophic.
The Tunisian parliament has approved the 180 million euro fund, as well as the government support to the vulnerable population. The cabinet of Elias al-Fakhfakh has granted an exceptional allowance to 623,000 families with limited income, 350,000 private sector employees affected by the crisis, and 10,000 workers who lost their jobs.
The partnership between Tunisia and the African Development Bank has been going on for almost 50 years, covering different sectors, including health, human development, energy, water, transport, agriculture, and the financial sector. The new loan strengthens this partnership.
The African Development Bank program will also enable 230,000 small farmers, more than 320,000 employees, and around 50,000 self-employed workers and artisans to keep their jobs. The mobilized funds will help save 400 Tunisian exporting enterprises and 250,000 private businesses from bankruptcy. It will also enhance early detection through the use of rapid screening tests for more than 450,000 people.
And from the report there in Tunisia, we come back home because the Opposition Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction is punching their above heads for being vindicated on the seizure of their assets. The Supreme Court ruling that additional legal proceedings was required for the enforcement of the Janneh Commission, although the Gambia government did not agree with the position of the court. It had since Friday announced the suspension of all sales of properties in the name of ex-President Jammeh. Here is more details of that in this report.
About 1 week following the Supreme Court ruling that additional legal proceeding was required for the enforcement of the Janneh Commission, the Opposition Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction is punching the air above heads for being vindicated on the seizure of their assets. Although the Gambia government did not agree with the opposition of the Court of Appeal, it had since Friday announced the suspension of all sales of properties flowing from the Janneh Commission recommendations. The commission, which was established to inquire financial activities of public bodies, enterprises and offices as it regards their dealings with former President Yahya Jammeh and connected matters found together with his associates liable for financial mismanagement. As a result, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Tambadou, said in October 2019 that the government will compensate victims of human rights violation of the former government from proceeds of the wealth in the name of Jammeh. However, the former ruling party of APRC accused the Barrow-led government for taking the law into its hands. Speaking to the Good Morning Africa program on Wednesday, Dudu Jah, deputy spokesperson of the APRC, said it was illegal for the government of the Gambia to have sold the Jammeh assets.
That what they were doing was illegal. During the procession of the Janneh Commission, they started selling some of these assets, which according to law was definitely wrong.
Dudu said what belongs to the party is solely for the party and that it should not be intersected with what belongs to the state. Hence, they will take relentless legal actions to reclaim what belongs to the party.
We are a party and we are only entitled to what belongs to the party. A government is a government. What transpired in the previous government, the people involved, they are the ones who could stand outright and to proclaim it. Unless a power of attorney is sent to the party for us to represent them. But if that is not done, we don't have any rights to claim any property that were under government. But what belongs to the party will do everything in our assets.
In September last year, the APRC urged the government to rescind its decision on the white paper approving several recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry to place punishment on former President Yahya Jammeh and his inner circle. For iAfrica TV, Sohna Tunkara.
And from that report there by Sona Tunkara, we will now take a break and come back shortly with the remaining of the stories. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching the World Today News Bulletin. And now to matters of the TRRC, because the Commissioner of the Operations of the Gambia Prison Services testified before the TRRC, during which he reiterated the inhuman conditions of the prisoners at the country's central prison. The Mile 2 prison admits more than 1,000 prisoners with little or no access to healthy and quality food, poor ventilations, and inadequate medical support. Here's more of that in this report.
A number of detainees in the security wing of the country's central prison were denied basic rights to food, visitors, and access to medical assistance. These prisoners were housed with maximum security from the directive of the former President Yahya Jammeh, without being tried by any court of law. This was the testimony of the Commissioner of Operations of the Gambia Prison Service, Lamin Sow, at the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission on Tuesday. According to his testimony, prisoners were admitted in the security wing without a warrant, and that any prison officer who attempts to question those executive orders will test the brutality of the then government.
Neither a remand warrant, neither a convict warrant.
Did any of you officers try to actually not admit any of these persons when they were brought into the prisons at any time?
Not to my knowledge, madam. Because if you try to do so, you will have a serious problem in those days.
Can you shed light on what those problems would have been?
Yeah, if you are lucky that you are fired from your job, you thank God. Because I was not present in 2007, but I was informed that one Ibrahim Assise, he was a sergeant then, who works with the drug squad at this present moment.
Prisoners would be taken out from the cells to undergo rounds of torture by the defunct National Intelligence Agency and the Jungler operatives under the former system.
So, and that resulted to a lot of sickness, biri-biri, you know, swollen legs, you see, which, if not addressed quickly, can lead to the sudden death of a prisoner.
So, Mr. Sow, you're telling us that this food was prepared overnight?
Good, yes.
And in the morning, water would be poured into it?
Into it, yes.
To mix it and make it softer?
Good.
And be served to the inmates?
That's it.
Which is of very bad quality?
That's it. It was a very,
and
very
poor
bad,
malnutrition?
Very bad quality. With the food that they cook there, there is an officer who is in charge of the cookhouse. Though being the operation, sometimes I will work there, but this officer is a senior officer who is directly responsible, and he also has some officers under him.
Many of the prisoners were exposed to several ailments and even death due to the poor quality of food, which was served sometimes days after it was prepared.
Anyway, I know they are collected from the cells. Whether they sacrifice that, I know something about cooking or not, that is not up to my knowledge. The officer in charge of the cookhouse may have a better knowledge than that. But I can remember one time when we had a problem in the cookhouse, the then deputy director of prisons, Mr. Jara, have to walk inside the main yard and ask the prisoners who among you have first-hand knowledge of cooking here. So people volunteered, and we were lucky to have one, Lamin Sanyang, who said he one time cooks at the hotel. So he was taking with other people to see that the problem is sorted out.
Among the responsibilities of prison service in reformation, rehabilitation and reintegration has been defeated by what the RRC witnesses describe as habitual killing and torturing of inmates from 1994 to 2017.
Witnesses continue to appear before the TRRC. Now, from that report there, next we head to Ghana because the news of the reopening of schools in the country did not go down well with most parents who fear that their children might be at risk of the coronavirus. Ghana has been under lockdown since the outbreak of the pandemic in April, as the number of cases spreading almost on daily basis. The government was forced to install mechanisms to conduct classes through the mass media, but that appears to shift in strategies. Let's have more details of that in this report.
Letitia Tano has been taking lessons from home since schools were closed in March due to the coronavirus outbreak. She's watching an education channel created by the state broadcaster to teach students. She says it's been difficult adjusting to this style of learning out of the classroom.
When I was in school like this, if I didn't understand something, I had to consult my teacher so that he would explain it to me. But here, since I can't meet the teacher, I find it very difficult understanding some questions and things they'll be teaching on the television.
The government has further eased lockdown restrictions, which will allow schools to reopen later this month. Only final year high school students like Letitia and those at university will. But some parents are worried about the further spread of the coronavirus when schools reopen.
The COVID-19 has not left, it's still with us. So as a parent, my concern is how safe my child is. Even though we are going to put the necessary measures in place for the child to go back to school, how safe are they over there?
Since Ghana first eased lockdown in April, the country's infections of the coronavirus have kept increasing. The government says the country has to learn to live with the virus. All schools are to be disinfected before they are reopened. A classroom like this, which usually holds 50 students, will now be limited to 30. This is to allow some level of physical distancing among the students. The government has also tasked head teachers with enforcing the strict wearing of face masks and hand hygiene. Some are calling for all teachers and students to be tested for COVID-19 before they are allowed back in schools.
We need to draw up some criteria. And after that, whoever meets that criteria should be allowed to undergo testing. Because we may not be able to handle all of them undergoing the tests. But if the government or somebody suggests that they should be tested, I think it's a good idea. It would have been much better.
Letitia Tano says she's happy to be going back to school, but she may find it difficult complying with physical distancing when she meets her friends.
And from the report there in, of course, Accra, Ghana, finally we move to neighboring Nigeria, where over 120 aircrafts have been grounded across the airports in Nigeria since the outbreak of the coronavirus. Well, the government has announced resumption of services in the aviation industry throughout the country. However, this has been accompanied with regulations of reducing the total passengers to 30. Here's more details of that.
Over 120 aircraft have been grounded at airports across Nigeria for months now as a result of the country's COVID-19 lockdown. For an aviation industry player like Gabriel Olowo, who heads a body of aviation experts in Nigeria, the announcement of the resumption of operations is a very cheering news.
We've been strategizing, especially on how not to spread the virus. From all stakeholders, the airport, the ticketing office, the customs, immigration, and all that are involved, in the value chain. We've been talking. And I think we have templates on ground. What we need to do now is to walk the talk. Let's now see how ready we are to experiment the challenges of COVID.
Part of Nigeria's coronavirus mitigation strategy is a directive by the government that every flight must not exceed between 50 to 70% passenger capacity to allow for social distancing.
The demand of social distancing on board, where today's passenger is asking for the cheapest fare, you might need 70, 80, 90% load factor to break even. If you're going to need 80% load factor to break even, and social distancing demands that the aeroplane will be 50% at the same cost of doing business and at the same tariff that you are used to, it's not going to be possible.
There's every likelihood that fares may go up when flight operations eventually resume. But for a frequent flyer like Tony, fares are the least of his problems.
Yes, I'm more bothered about safety because I'm one of the frequent flyers, and I'd rather my safety comes first before the cost. That's the biggest issue we have. But I feel government should not leave it to the airlines alone. I feel government should come to their aid. That's the only way you can make the airlines be able to survive this time we're in.
Aviation has been one of the sectors most impacted by Nigeria's coronavirus restrictions. Virtually all airlines have placed their employees on indefinite leave without pay. And even when flight operations begin later this month, it is certain that not all the employees will be recalled to work.
Because of what has happened and because of the fear that people have been developed in people, it is going to take them time before they begin to think of even traveling. And even if you are going to travel again, it is going to require some procedures. They might start asking you to bring certificate. They might ask you to, do social distances. And because of all those, protocols, some people might decide to say, I'm not even going to travel now.
The Nigerian Aviation Ministry estimates that for every day this lockdown has lasted, the cost on the country's aviation industry runs into almost $2 million daily. And even if airlines receive government support, it's still uncertain if they will find a viable financial path forward.
Well, viewers, that's the report in Abuja, Nigeria. Finally, brings this news bulletin to an end. But for more details on this and other stories, you can also log on our website on africa.tv. Well, once again, many thanks for the pleasure of your company. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and bye for now.
TRRC Truth Reconciliation and Reparations Commission ngir fàttali leen rek TRRC moom leen jox doole sàkku dëgg ak taxawal dëgg si wàllum jafe-jafe not ak toroxtaane yi tegoon nit ñi bàyyeekoo July 1994 ba January 2017 si wàllum liggéey ngir sàkku dëgg nag fokk ñu am képp ku nga xamante ne nii bokkoon na si nit ñu nga xamante leen notoon toroxal leen teg leen ay ñaawteef ñu leen di ñaan ngeen ñoo joxe seen statement yi waaye ñu leen di wax tamit ne képp ku nga xamante ne nii bëgg ngaa ñoo joxe sa kàddu waaye bëgguloo feeñ si télé wala si caméra wala si nit ñu bari loolu yépp ne la ko mën a rafetal ñu defal la ko si secret kon ñu leen di ñaan yéen ñépp képp ku nga xamante ni jànko wante nga toroxtande wala ñaawteef bu bàyyeekoo boppu jamono ñu lay ñaan nga ñoo joxe sa statement bi képp ku nga xamante ne ni bëgg ngaa ñoo joxe sa